If I were given the reins to run BYU athletics for 100 days, what would I try to accomplish? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and more importantly, thank you to all of you who like to call our everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $100 off your first purchase. All right, coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about what I would try to accomplish if I were given the reins to run BYU athletics for 100 days. We'll also talk about Jager Demin. Is the sheen coming off of him? Is he falling from grace as an NBA draft prospect? And then we'll finish up this week with our weekly Q&A session with our insiders group. Some great questions on basketball, football, and even some off the beaten path. And we'll get to all those here in just a little while. But good friend of the show, Tucker, reached out to me not too long ago and said, hey, there's a changing of the guard obviously going on in Washington, D.C. And a lot of people will tell you that the first 100 days of a new administration in a president's tenure sets the tone for essentially the next 4 years of their term. So, bringing it closer to home, Tucker asked me, Jake, if you were given the reins to run BYU athletics for 100 days, what would you try to accomplish? It was an interesting question. I've been pondering on it off and on. I think he sent it to me like a week ago. But Tucker, here's what I've got for you. Number one, I wouldn't change what the vision is with BYU athletics right now. And I know that sounds really like a cop-out answer, but any of you who are longtime listeners of this podcast, some of you may be new, I've been pretty hard on BYU's administration with regards to their what I perceived as lack of interest or support of BYU athletics and the vision for what BYU athletics can do for Brigham Young University and, by extension, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This current administration at BYU, C. Shane Reese, the president of the BYU, Keith Vorking, his advancement vice president, going up to Clark Gilbert, who's the CES, the church education system, whatever he is. He's the head honcho of church education for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even up to the board of trustees. Speaking of members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, the first presidency for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the vision all the way from the top down to even the coaches, the players, the administrators at the various sports at Brigham Young University. Quite frankly, I really like where things are at right now because I feel like everybody, I'm talking from the top down to the bottom, they have a shared collective vision. And it feels like for the first time in quite some time, that vision is shared across all levels. And I would make sure that essentially is like put in, it's codified. To use the political what I'm trying to say, parlance of the day. But the bigger thing is, I think BYU athletics is in a very good spot right now. They've never made more money in their athletics history, obviously with the new deals with the TV rights, with the Big 12 membership that they've got. They also have boosters lining up to put money into the coffers, whether it's for NIL and football. Obviously, basketball has taken a lot of those headlines with the amount of money, the millions of dollars being invested into various players. But the bigger thing is, I think the vision for BYU is shared across the board, and it needs to continue. A couple of things I would change, though. I would like to see BYU add some sports at the D1 level. And the ones I would look at, and I'm not going to cut sports actually, because I think BYU is in a spot where they actually could add and be just fine. That's my personal opinion on the matter. I've never seen the ledger. I don't know where things stand on this, but here's the deal. BYU's got ultra successful lacrosse programs on the men's and women's side of things. Why can't you bring them in, move up to the D1 level and let them really compete at a national level and become what I think could be a really, really two solid programs in that regard? You already have very, very successful volleyball programs. Why is beach volleyball not a thing at BYU? I know that there might be some issues with regards to the uniforms, but that can be overcome. But the bigger thing is I think BYU has an opportunity, I think, to strategically add some sports that would enhance an overall strong athletic department, but make it even stronger because I think they truly can compete on a national level. We are watching cross country who has dual national championships right now. The volleyball programs I already mentioned are very, very good. We have women's soccer. Jennifer Rockwood is a living legend, and I don't think people really understand what she means to BYU, what she means to BYU women's soccer. I would like to see BYU men's soccer get a chance to play at the D1 level. I would strategically add some sports. Now, like I said, I have 100 days in this scenario to make that happen. How quickly could I secure that, make that happen? TBD. But that's one thing I would look at. Other thing, I would ensure that BYU football continues to get the priority that I believe it deserves. All of us know that football makes the lion's share of the revenue that BYU athletics across the board relies upon. Men's basketball, women's soccer, some of these other programs do make a little bit of money, but we're talking 80 to 90% of the revenue comes through BYU football, and they should be treated as the golden goose. And that means I would make sure that Kalani Sitake feels very secure with regards to the amount of funding in his program. Does he need to add some staff here and there? Strategically, where can BYU find advantages in the margins? We all know that BYU is a unique university. It's a church-affiliated school, has an honor code. It still sticks to its guns with regards to academics, and I wholeheartedly applaud all of that because I like the fact that BYU differentiates themselves from a lot of programs and a lot of athletic departments across the country who have proverbially sold their souls. BYU sticks by its principles and its morals, and I appreciate about that. But you can still find those money ball advantages in the margin type deals to make sure that BYU football maintains the edge it has. We have seen them break through to a very, very high level this past season, going 11-2. What is it going to take for BYU to remain in the upper echelon of the Big 12? I would do everything within my power in my 100 days to make sure that they are secure there. Same thing with BYU men's basketball. Now, I would tweak one thing. BYU basketball, Kevin Young has made it very clear that he wants to make it a NBA factory. He wants guys of high talent to come into BYU, develop, and then go live their dreams at the professional level. I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance struck with regards to success on the court in addition to developing high-level talent, but I don't think that that is too far off. I think that Kevin Young will strike that balance before long. I would just do my part to make sure that what I could do as the administrator running this whole thing to make sure that gets sped up a little bit, because I do think that there's going to be Cougar fans, and I've already heard from some of y'all who are upset with the way the BYU basketball is operating right now under Kevin Young. He's a first-time head coach at the college level. I think that he will find the balance of having success on the court that Cougar fans can root for, but at the same time, making sure that the guys that play for him that have the aspirations of going to the NBA, whether they're one and doneers, they're four-year guys, he will strike that balance of having success on the court in addition to developing those guys and getting them to the next level. So those are just a few things I would approach for BYU. Like I said, I'm not going to cut sports. I don't think BYU needs to. Now, are there going to be other athletic departments across the country with revenue sharing coming into effect that with $20 million, there's going to be some hard decisions made? Yes, but BYU is on a really, really solid footing right now with regards to where they stand. Remember, I mentioned the fact that BYU's never made this much money ever before in their athletic department's history. Well, the nice part is if you're going to have to carve out $20 million into your budget for revenue sharing or more than that going forward, BYU can do that without having to cut too much. We've already seen programs or athletic departments like Indiana. They've cut upwards of 10% of their staff in various areas to carve out that money. They're not the only ones. BYU's coming into the money, to their ship is coming in at the right time to allow them to step right in and be very, very solid on very solid ground footing wise. They're going to be in the black. That's the way that BYU's mandated athletics are mandated to operate. They cannot run in the red. And I think BYU is in a really, really good spot. So I don't know. Is there something else you'd like to see BYU do if you were given 100 days to run BYU athletics? Maybe you'd run things differently. But those are just a few of the things that have been percolating in my head after Tucker asked me that question of what I would try to accomplish in 100 days. And it wouldn't be a lot of time, but I think it could set a really strong course for BYU athletics along the way. So let me know what you think. Comment below whether you're watching this on YouTube. Reach out via social media. Let us know. And obviously, we'll garner your feedback and see what y'all have for us with regard to what the future of BYU athletics would look like if you were given control of the athletic department for 100 days. All right, coming up here in just a minute, let's go over to BYU basketball for a minute here. A lot of talk this week about Jager Demin. Mike Babcock from Babcock Hoops was at the game in Boulder, wrote a really interesting breakdown of what he sees from Egor Demin with regards to his future in the NBA. Is the sheen wearing off of Egor? Let's dig into it. We'll get to that momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys to get you out to the event you want to go to. Of course, all of us probably have dreams of seeing our favorite NFL team play. Playoff games are an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. And if you guys want to do that, our friends over at Game Time can make it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with a brand new feature on their app called Game Time Picks. It filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals and great seats. You can focus on what matters, and that is being there and enjoying the game you're at. You can use Game Time to find tickets to NFL games or anything else you want to go to, comedy, theater, music events. And the best part is their app has a Game Time guarantee that is backed up with Game Time, making sure that you will be taken care of. They have job loss protection. They have an incredible amount of features. And the best part is they have event cancellation as well, protection. Lowest price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find better prices on the seats than Game Time has. So take a guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends over at Game Time. All you got to do is download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. You know that is Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you being with us here on this Friday. All right, so Jager Demin is in a bit of a shooting slump. I'm not kidding, not a bit. He is in a shooting slump. I should retract that statement and correct it. He is in a shooting slump. Is that taking him out of the running with regards to the NFL draft? Should he return to BYU next year for another year playing for Kevin Young? Is he too skinny? Is he too slow? Can he play at the NBA level? Those are all questions that have been asked of this kid from the time before he got to BYU, but particularly in the past month or so as he's been on the court for BYU and struggling a bit. The biggest thing, and Mike Babcock wrote a really good piece for his website, Babcock Hoops. We've seen some other people pontificate on where Jager Demin is at. But the one thing I keep coming back to, I think it gets lost in the conversation about Jager Demin, is that the NBA is an interesting animal. Now, many of you know that I've worked in and around the Utah Jazz for years. My radio station, in the interest of full disclosure, was owned by the Utah Jazz for well over a decade. I was technically an NBA employee working for the Utah Jazz, and that was now the KSL Sports and was then the Zone Sports Network. But the biggest thing with the NBA is when it comes to the NBA, they are drafting on potential, not production. There's a difference there. Now, Jager Demin is an absolutely incredible passer. His ability to see the court, to tee his teammates up, the pass between the legs the other night against Colorado to Richie Saunders to make that shot, that was awesome. And Richie said after the game, it's a good thing I made that shot, isn't it? And yes, it is. But the bigger point to be made here is Jager Demin, yeah, his shooting, not good. I'm not breaking any news to anybody who's watched Jager Demin play the past month and change. His shooting is way off. Will he get that back? TBD. But the bigger point to be made here is NBA teams already have, we're talking oodles and oodles of information on Jager. He played for Real Madrid over in Europe. This is a kid who's been playing against full-grown pro players for a number of years. And I look at some of these evaluations that his foot speed is too slow and he's too skinny for the NBA level. Newsflash. A lot of guys are too skinny and may be a step slow when it comes to playing in the NBA right now. But once again, NBA teams draft on potential. They have a vision in their mind of what certain guys are going to be. Cooper Flagg from Duke looks like an absolutely incredible two-way player who is going to be I think if everything pans out, a top 5 player in the NBA at some point in his career. He is absolute dynamite. Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Kasparis Jakichonis, whatever his name is, out at Illinois. There are really high-level players in this draft class, but I don't think Jager Demin is that far off from regaining his lauded status as a potential top 5 pick in this NBA draft. The biggest thing is he's a 6'9" guard / wing player who's got incredible court vision, has incredible ability to set his teammates up, and his mechanics on his shot, and I don't proclaim to be an expert on this, but talking with people who are far more engrossed with regards to shot mechanics and what things, they say that his mechanics are really fine on his shooting. They think it'll come around in time. So I get that the difference of Jager looked so good early on at BYU, and you obviously chalk that up probably to the level of competition BYU was playing. He gets injured, it was a bone contusion, whatever it was, that almost it did cost him a month. He comes back for Big 12 play, and his shot has been off. It's not been there. But I don't think that is going to knock him out of, at worst, the top 15 of the NBA draft. And that's the other thing about this. Is if you're a lottery pick in the NBA, it's really hard to turn down that money because it's guaranteed money over multiple years. I know that BYU can make up some of the difference with regards to NIL, but when you have an opportunity to make generational type money, launch a pro career that you've, in his mind, have been waiting on for years at this point, I think it'd be hard pressed for him to be like, you know what, I'm going to spurn all that and run it back at BYU. But Jager's also been very open about the fact that he's willing to play for BYU for multiple years if he feels it's in his best interest. But I don't think that writing him off right now saying he's not an NBA draft prospect. No, he's absolutely an NBA draft prospect. He's a lottery prospect, despite the fact that he is not shooting the ball well at all. The size, the length he has, his court vision, his ability to set his teammates up, those are all NBA skills. And I've worked in and around NBA people. And the one thing most NBA players have is they have one skill that is just, it's why they're an NBA player. Some guys shoot the ball at an extremely high level. Other guys are lockdown defenders. A guy like Jager Demin, he's the link player that the NBA craves. A big body, long athlete you can put anywhere on the court, and they're going to make sure that the offense operates, and they're going to be able to facilitate it and make sure that their teammates are teed up to have success on the court. That is what the calling card for Egor Demin is right now. Is that enough for him to say, hey, maybe I need another year playing at the collegiate level? TBD. And that's ultimately going to be his and his family's decision as to what he's going to do. The other thing is, and I can back up some of the reporting that Patrick Kinahan, my compatriot, I produce his show on a daily basis at the KSL Sports Zone. He has said that Jager Demin people have essentially told BYU if he were to return to BYU next year, BYU would be on the hook to make up the difference of, let's say he's a projected top 10 pick. He wants the money that he would have made as a rookie in the NBA in NIL money. How high and how willing is BYU to go with regards to NIL? How many boosters do they have that can offer up multiple millions of dollars? Because a top 10 pick, I have to look at what the number is, but I think number 10 is probably at least a $5 million a year deal on the rookie wage scale in the NBA. Obviously, we already talked about AJ DeBonsa coming in next year. You have a pretty expensive roster. If Igor, and trust me, the people that told PK that, I talked to people who I know and they backed it up. That's a lot of money to have to deal with. So I don't think that Jager Demin, his star has fallen that far, quite honestly. I really don't. But I also don't proclaim to be an expert when it comes to the NBA draft. I look at what he offers on the court as a basketball player across the board. Yeah, that shot, it's got to come around at some point. But I'm telling you, NBA teams, they will convince themselves that they can make him into what they want him to be. And that obviously the shot is a part of it because you have to be able to make shots to play in this era of the NBA. But I'm telling you, don't get too quick to say that Jager Demin, he needs to come back right away, because I think it's far from a guarantee that he's right now. I'd say it's more likely he's a one and doneer than he is a returning to BYU next year. That's from my vantage point. I love the kid. I think he's an absolutely incredible human being. I've had very limited interaction with him. He comes off as a very down-to-earth kid who is just, he's absolutely intent on making the most of himself as a basketball player. And you can do a lot with that. And I don't see that star falling that far so far. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I just don't see the sheen coming off him. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I do think he's got some really, really special abilities. I think the NBA sees those as well. All right, we will finish up today's show with some more basketball thoughts, also some football thoughts. Weekly mailbag edition with our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. We'll get to that momentarily as we continue on right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks is offering up a very special deal to our listeners with this weekend with the NFL ongoing. But PrizePicks, as many of you might know, has over 10 million members and billions in winnings, and is the place to get in on real money sports action, where you can get in and have fun with daily fantasy sports. It's playoff time. I see there's no better place to get in on that action with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players. And if your picks hit, you go up to 1,000 times your money. Think about that. 1,000 times the money you put up just by making a few simple picks. And the best part is they have a brand new offer this week. And they're offering a free pick from now until Sunday's matchup. For the NFC Championship game, Jaden Daniels only needs one passing yard for you to win 1 square. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly in addition to that after you play your first $5 lineup. Of course, it's all courtesy of your friends over at Prize Picks. So once again, 1 passing yard from Jaden Daniels, and I can pretty much guarantee, unless something crazy happens, he's going to get to that. But the bigger point to me is you get that free square from our friends over at Prize Picks, and also use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly to play your first $5 lineup. It's all courtesy, once again, with a courtesy of your friends over at Prize Picks, where they like to say you can run your game. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, time for our weekly mailbag. And if you'd like to ask questions on the show, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. You get 2 weeks of a free trial, $5 a month to join the group, get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I am hearing. Comes to your phone in the form of a text message. You can text with me back and forth as well. It's been a really, really fun feature we've added in the past year plus on the show. And quite honestly, those of you who are already on the Insiders Group or have been there, want to come back around, and if you want to be a new part of it, please join us. It's been a really, really fun feature, and it's one of my favorite things to talk with y'all about BYU. All right, on to the questions. First one comes from Donovan. A few other people asked a similar question of this. Let's see here. We've got Michael asking it too. What are the chances BYU makes the NCAA tournament right now? Speaking of men's basketball. Right now, so January 24th, I would say I'm leaning towards BYU not making it because I just don't see them being on the bubble. They're not on the bubble right now. It feels like they're off the bubble a little bit, and they're going to have to fight their way back onto that bubble, and that's the thing I wonder about. They've got a really, really tough schedule upcoming. I said earlier in the week that Greg Wrubell put it out there. The final 12 games of BYU's conference slate this season, 10. Count them 10 quad 1 games. Those are the toughest games in college basketball parlance. And you got 10 of them in your final 12. Whew, they overcome that. They deserve to be in. And if they can get to 500 in conference, so 10-10, heaven forbid get to 11-9, I think they're in the NCAA tournament field, but they're going to have to fight, scratch, and claw just to get there. I really do think that. Let's see. Another question on basketball front from Ryan. Do you think the lack of success or potential down year in basketball could lead to a dip in recruiting of the top prospects? Ooh, interesting here. Now, the other thing about this is that I think there was one other question that related to this. Oh, you're right here. RJ, if we don't make the tournament, will DeBonsa opt out and go to Alabama? Okay, here's the deal. AJ DeBonsa, there's always going to be those concerns that he could go elsewhere and play, obviously, but he's signed with BYU. And more importantly, the one thing that speaks more than anything else is green. And what do I mean by green? It's money. BYU is offering up, or not offering up, they've signed AJ DeBonsa with a pretty incredible NIL deal. And here, I'd be hard-pressed to think that Xavier Staten as well is probably in that same circumstance. I think some of you wonder about him as a 4-star prospect in his own right. Could those guys leave BYU? Sure, they could ask for a release from their deal, from their national letter of intent. But I think the bigger thing is they want to be coached up by a guy like Kevin Young. So I'm not actually all that worried that they're going to opt out of playing for BYU. I just don't see that because, like I said, there's a lot of money. There's just a lot of money at stake here. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but I do wonder about that. Byron, this basketball coaching staff is all about player development. However, I'm struggling to see development with our 2 super freshmen. I'm very concerned about catchings. If he were playing as expected, I think we would have 2 or 3 more wins. He seems to be going the wrong direction in his play, both mentally and physically. Could future recruits second guess coming to BYU if a freshman don't develop as expected? I guess that concern, going back to what I just talked about, that could be a concern for certain guys if they wonder if Kevin Young can really develop them. But at the same time, when you got guys like a Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, heck, who else? There's a bunch of NBA players who are big fans of Kevin Young and laud him as a really developmental coach. I don't know. I maybe I don't know. I just look at that and I think look at the situation at hand, and I think every player has their own philosophy with regards to what they're looking for. But Kevin Young's got a lot of people backing him with regards to what he can do on the bat in terms of like getting guys ready for the NBA. So I just look at that. Let's see what rounds are BYU. So this comes from Brady. What rounds are BYU prospects projecting to? Also, are there any players currently on the roster that project to be day 1 or 2 picks in the future? I'm guessing this is on the football side of things, Brady. A lot of it right now, I think the best option for BYU NFL draft wise right now, I would say there's 2 guys, Caleb Etienne and Tyler Batty. I think they're the 2 highest rated guys. Our friend Connor Pay here on this podcast, love to see him get his opportunity. But I think the best bet in the NFL draft might be middle rounds with Tyler Batty and Caleb Etienne, but they're going to have to test extremely well to make it into those rounds. That's the thing about it. Future day 1 or 2 picks, Jack Kelly. Jack Kelly would have been a mid-round pick this year had he come out. And I'm appreciative that he's coming back to BYU. We chronicled that on yesterday's show. For those of you who may have missed it, every dayers obviously saw that. But I think he's a day 1 or 2 pick. I think there's also guys that will emerge in time that could become day 1 or 2 picks. But look at what Isaiah Glasker does. Like, he is an absolutely dynamic athlete at 6'5", his ability to run. NFL teams are looking at saying that height weight speed ratio, we can deal with that. So I would say Jack Kelly absolutely is day 1 or 2 prospect, given that he continues to develop at the pace he's doing it right now. Let's see here. Other questions. Reagan, can Jager Demin get his shot back? How can Jager Demin get his shot back? Or can he? Just feels like a long slump. I would hope it comes back around. Like I said, people told me that his mechanics look really, really good. And he also says this, football-wise, what is the feel around the offseason workouts? Does the team still feel disrespected? And what are they taking that with them into the offseason and onward? I talked about it a little bit earlier here in the week, that the fact that he finished behind SMU, a team he beat head-to-head in the national rankings, that can't sit right with BYU. Everything I've heard about offseason workouts is BYU's working extremely hard. They've put some content out showing these guys doing sled pulls, and I'm telling you, BYU's got a really, really good thing going right now with their sports science department, the strength and conditioning staff, because those are the guys who can have the hands-on with BYU players right now. None of the position coaches, Kalani Sitake, they can't do that. They can't have contact with those guys right now. That's why they're out recruiting. But what the strength and sports science staffs are doing, they're transforming guys' bodies. And BYU benefited from that this past year. And with another year of work, I think you can expect some really good things on that front. Let's see here. Other questions. Jonathan Searle says this. Is Jager Demin going to be a one and done given his injury slowing him down? The team isn't what we thought. I think I've already chronicled that. But he also says, can Young talk him to coming back next year to have the super squad? Been reading lots on his draft stock, and it's down from all the articles I read. They can make the pitch, obviously. And like I said, money will talk in that regard. But I have a hard time believing that a guy that could get a lot of those deals are at least 3 years guaranteed for first round picks. A hard time passing up that money. No, that's just, I'm a podcaster doing a podcast in my basement in a closet. So what do I know? But that's just the way I would look at it. Let's see other questions here. Danny says this. I don't know if it'd be possible. It would be cool to have a dinner with all those who subscribe to you and then go to a BYU football game. Now, that'd be hard pressed with football because a lot of you know what I do on the radio side of things with regards to my pre and post game duties. But Danny, we can dig into that. Maybe we can do something this offseason, maybe a baseball game or something like that. That'd be fun. We can talk about that. Taylor, way too early hot takes for BYU football 2025. They're going to win 10 games. Is that a hot take? I don't know. I think that Jake Retzloff is going to continue to improve. I hope he has enough to get BYU to the next level. I think BYU's defense is going to be even better in 2025 than it was in 2024. Crazy as that sounds, but the linebacking core, the upgrades on the defensive line, another year of work with the secondary, guys like Tanner Wall, who are just absolutely dynamite on BYU's defense. I think the defense could be really, really elite for BYU and could be even better this coming year. A few hot takes for you. I think LJ Martin could challenge for 1,000 yards if he stays healthy. Now, he dealt with, I think it was knee, shoulder injuries, all kinds of stuff this past season, but you saw him in that bowl game. When he's right, that dude's absolutely dynamite, and I would love to see him do his thing. I think the last question here I see, Jared right here. It's a great one. Do you see any of the less talked about sports, swimming, gymnastics, tennis, etc., making a breakout anytime soon? Ooh, okay. Well, if you missed it, and it's crazy to me, but we just saw BYU baseball pick dead last in the Big 12 conference. Whew, and by a significant margin, no less. Trent Pratt has got a lot of work ahead of him. I want to see BYU baseball become at least a decent program, but wow, you have nowhere to go but up for BYU baseball. So maybe they're the breakout. Tennis is interesting. They've had some moments the past couple of years on the men's and women's tennis side of things. I think the golf programs, men's and women's golf, have a lot of potential in them with some of the athletes they've got there. But the one that I'll say I'm interested to see how they do this year is softball. Uh, BYU softball, and in the interest of full disclosure, my wife is a BYU softball alum, so I've had a point of keeping an eye on that. I don't proclaim to be a super fan of it or at any level, but what Gordon Eakin built for many years there with BYU softball was really good. They were routinely playing in the NCAA regionals for a decade plus. They've fallen off a little bit, obviously, with the jump up into the Big 12. I do want to see if Gordon can get them back to competing for regionals, and we'll see what happens. That's the one I would keep an eye on. I do want to see how BYU softball does, because I think baseball and softball were maybe the most disadvantaged programs jumping to the Big 12 across the athletic department for BYU, because they're cold weather schools and a lot of really good baseball and softball programs in the Big 12. But I'd like to see some of them break. I'd like to see, like I said, going back to the original topic on today's podcast, like I want to see BYU athletics at a national level competing, and some of those lesser known programs, they should have an opportunity to move up. And I hope that they take advantage of it. Cause like I said, baseball, when you pick dead last in the league, you got nowhere to go but up. So let's see what they can do this spring. Baseball starts in like 2 or 3 weeks. So get ready. It might be actually just 2 weeks, but nonetheless, that's going to do it for this Friday edition of the show. A big thank you, as always, for your guys' support. Have a fantastic weekend. BYU in action tomorrow night against Cincinnati. I'll do a postcast shortly after that game goes final. We'll get you my thoughts after watching that. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Please share, subscribe, rate, review, support the show as you guys hear all the time, and make sure that you guys join us every single day and be an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.